Welcome to Atanasda Chapter 7 Beta, in which we talk about interrogative and indefinite pronouns and adjectives. So let's start out by defining some terminology. Interrogative means it asks a question. In English, these question words for the interrogative pronouns are who, what, and whom, and whose. Pronoun means that it stands in the place of a noun. So in my sample sentence, what is it? What is an interrogative pronoun. It is an ordinary pronoun. The answer, it is a book. It is still an ordinary pronoun. And we've answered the interrogative pronoun, what, with the noun book. So an adjective, as opposed to a pronoun, instead of standing in place of a noun, it modifies a noun. So in my sample sentence, which book is it? Which is an interrogative adjective, telling us more about the noun book. In Greek, these will agree in gender, number, and case. So if book is masculine singular nominative, then which must be masculine singular nominative. So book is our noun. It's interrogative because which asks a question, and it is still a pronoun. The answer, it is Atanasda. It is still a pronoun. And then the interrogative adjective, which, is answered by the noun Atanasda. And then last term to define is indefinite. So if it's an indefinite pronoun, it means it's unspecified, i.e. in English, someone, something. If it's an indefinite adjective, it means it's unspecified. So sometimes you'll translate the indefinite adjective with a certain, like a certain book, but a lot of the times you'll just translate it with the English indefinite article, a. So if we're talking about a book and it's the indefinite adjective is modifying the noun book, then you might just translate it a book as opposed to the book, which in Greek will have the Greek definite article. So now that we've talked about meanings, let's look for a bit at the forms. We'll start with the interrogative pronoun and adjective, which share the same forms. So we'll find that the masculine and feminine share one set of forms, and then the neuter has a slight variation on this set of forms. So the nominative of the masculine and feminine is tis, and the genitive is tinos. Just like in the third declension nouns that we learned, this being a third declension pronoun / adjective means that you have to go to the genitive singular to find the stem. So lop off the ending, omicron sigma, and you're left with teen. So teen is our stem for the rest of them. Add our third declension endings, and then start applying rules. So we learned in the third declension nouns that the nu plus an internal sigma means the nu goes away. So teen C becomes TC. And then we're done with that one, and we can move on to the neuter. So let's write our stem down, add our neuter endings. Remember, there is no ending for the nominative accusative singular. Start talking about rules. Again, teen C becomes TC. Then the other rule is that if the word ends in nu, the nu goes away. So that applies to our nominative and accusative singular. So our nominative and accusative singular for the neuter is just T. So now let's talk about meaning. If it's an interrogative pronoun, it means it asks a question and it's a pronoun standing in place of a noun. So in English, when we're talking about actual human beings, men and women, we use the masculine and feminine form tis. And in English, we use pronouns like who, or if it's genitive, whose, dative to whom, accusative whom. If we're talking about stuff in both Greek and English, so Greek will use the neuter forms t, and English has a different word for stuff than for people, and that word is what. So nominative what, genitive of what, dative to what, accusative what. The adjective, by contrast, it's no longer about if we're talking about people versus things, but rather all adjectives must agree with the noun they modify in gender, number, and case. So if the noun is masculine or feminine, you will use the masculine and feminine version of tis. So you'll translate it which X, whatever we're talking about, provided that X is a masculine or feminine noun. Then for the neuters, again, if it's a neuter noun, you'll use the neuter form t, and you'll still translate it which X. So an example is, for masculine feminine, book happens to be masculine. So if we want to say which book, we say tis biblios. But if we want to say which plow, because plow happens to be a neuter noun, we have to modify it with the neuter adjective ti arotron, which plow. So same translation in English, but you have to pick the proper adjective depending on the gender of the noun. So one last note on this page is that the accents are now very, very important. To distinguish the interrogative, the question word, from the indefinite, which we're going to do on the next slide, the interrogative has to have the acute accent. So no matter what happens, even if T is followed immediately by another word, you do not change it to the grave. You keep the acute accent. So wherever this shows up in the sentence, it will always have the acute accent. So now let's compare to the indefinite on the next slide. So the indefinite pronoun and adjective, again, these two share the same forms with each other. They have all of the same letters as the interrogative, but different accentuation. So in the interrogative, the acute stayed where it was all the time, but in the indefinite, now the word is an enclitic. Also note, just to help you distinguish between the two, that the indefinite pronoun or adjective can never be the first word in a sentence. So instead of repeating the forms for you, because you can get the letters on the previous page, we're going to do some examples. So an example of an indefinite pronoun is ara horas tina ento antro. So translation, do you see anyone in the cave? So tina is masculine and feminine accusative singular. So we're talking about people, so I translate it as anyone, as opposed to anything, which is going to be my next example. So, ara horas ti ento antro. Ti is neuter, and so that means, do you see anything in the cave? Because now we're talking about things. So, just also notice that neither the word tina nor the word ti has an accent, because both of them are enclitics, and the accent has been subsumed into the previous word. So my example of an indefinite adjective is pleusi pota es nason tina mikron. Tina is feminine accusative singular purely because it happens to be modifying a noun that is also feminine accusative singular. So it's an adjective, it tells us more information about a noun. It's indefinite because we know that because it's an enclitic. You can see that nason has picked up a second accent from Tina. And then the translation is, do they ever sail to, I'm going to just translate Tina as a. Do they ever sail to a small island? I made a typo there. It's not a big island, the opposite. Do they ever sail to a small island? That's it for now. I will see you next time for Chapter 8.